Good morning, Kenya. Good morning, Africa. Good morning, the world. I hope and pray that you are okay wherever you are. In this session, I want to talk to the people of Burkina Faso. And I want to remind them by posing a question. If Thomas Sankara wakes up today, will he be happy to live in the 21st century Burkina Faso? That is a question to the people of Burkina Faso, and I believe they are capable of answering the question. If Thomas Sankara wakes up today, will he be happy to live in the 21st century Burkina Faso? Having said that, I want to remind Africans, and I want to remind us on this platform, that Thomas Sankara was a great leader of Africa. He was a great Pan-Africanist, and he was a strong opposer to colonization of Africa. He strongly opposed imperialism. That is a term that is always very difficult for me to pronounce, but Thomas Sankara was strongly against neocolonialism of Africa. He strongly criticized the colonization of Africa and Africa's continued dependency on the colonizers. Now, I just want to give Burkina Faso, I want to write an open letter to the Burkinabes and just brief them of who Thomas Isidore Noel Sankara was. Now, Thomas Sankara was the president of Burkina Faso between 1983 and 1987. He was born on 21st December 1949 and died through assassination on 15th October 1987. I have stated earlier that Thomas Sankara strongly criticized colonization. He strongly criticized neocolonialism in Africa, and he strongly promoted and supported Africa for Africa. That is one of the ideals that Thomas Sankara believed in. Now, Thomas Sankara also promoted national policies. He emphasized the need for Africans to focus on self-development. He emphasized the need for the Burkinabes to benefit from national developments. He encouraged the Burkinabes and other parts of Africa to focus on their own development, self-sufficiency. And in doing this, Thomas Sankara, as president, invested in healthcare, he invested in education, he invested in agriculture, he invested in land reforms, and he invested in mining solely to benefit the people of Burkina Faso. I also checked and found that Thomas Sankara was strongly aligned to the fact that children and women needed protection. He emphasized the protection of the rights of women and children. And under the presidency of Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso thrived. Children accessed education. Civilians had health care. Women were protected and their rights upheld. I also checked and found that Thomas Sankara built many schools. He built many hospitals, and he constructed many roads under his presidency. And during his time, there were no massive killing of innocent civilians. And to round all these issues up, Thomas Sankara was an individual with strong personal moral values. He had strong moral values. Some historians would argue that Thomas Sankara was incorruptible. Unlike the African leaders today, who have a strong taste for corruption. I have briefed the people of Burkina Faso of who Thomas Sankara was and what he did to Burkina Faso. I will refer to a speech just to remind the people of Burkina Faso of what Thomas Isidore Noel Sankara wanted, what he wanted for Burkina Faso, and what he wanted for Africa. I refer to the speech that Thomas Sankara delivered on 4th October 1984 during a United Nations General Assembly meeting in New York. I will not read the whole speech, but I will just read an excerpt from the speech. Thomas Sankara said, and I quote, "Before it is too late, and it is already late, this elite, these men of Africa, of the third world, must come to their senses. In other words, they must turn to their own societies. They must look at this wretchedness that we have inherited, to understand that the battle for thought that will help the disinherited masses not only is not a vain one, but can become credible at the international level. They must provide a faithful picture for their own peoples, a picture that will enable them to carry out profound changes in the social and political situation, so that we can free ourselves from the foreign domination and exploitation that can lead our states only to failure." Long story cut short, Thomas Sankara encouraged the people of Burkina Faso, encouraged Africans to focus on Africa. He encouraged Africans to focus on self-functioning. He encouraged Africa to focus on self-sufficiency. And he encouraged leaders, African leaders of the time and of the current generation, to focus on internal issues, internal development, national progress. What is happening in Burkina Faso today is completely contrary of what Thomas Sankara foretold. They completely define the opposite of what Thomas Sankara desired of Burkina Faso. The Burkina Faso we see today is a country experiencing coup after coup. The Burkina Faso we see today is one that is completely politically unstable. The Burkina Faso that we see today is one that has a strong attachment to the colonizers. You remember just recently, early this year, the Burkina Faso disengaged their diplomatic ties with the French and alternatively invited Russians. That is the Burkina Faso we see today. Completely opposite of what Thomas Sankara desired. Thomas Sankara desired an Africa, a Burkina Faso, which was self-reliant, which was focused on developing its own self. But the Burkina Faso we see in the 21st century is one whose attachment with the colonizers is strong, very strong. I also see a 21st century Burkina Faso where civilian killings, civilian murders, civilian deaths are the order of the day. Many civilians die every day without state intervention. I also see a 21st century Burkina Faso where children and women are killed. Their rights are compromised. Children have no education. There is no health care. There are no roads. And completely, the Burkina Faso infrastructure we see today is in ruins. If Thomas Sankara wakes up today, if Isidore Noel Sankara wakes up today, I ask the people of Burkina Faso, do you think he will be right? He will be contented? He will be happy? And he will be impressed to live in the Burkina Faso of the 21st century? I partly answer this question that if, and God forbid, if Thomas Isidore Noel Sankara wakes up today and sees the Burkina Faso of the 21st century, he will go back to his grave. He will not desire to live in the Burkina Faso we see today. He will emphasize the fact that the Burkina Faso leaders, African leaders, have failed Africa and have failed Burkina Faso. He will be alive to the fact that the Burkina Faso present today is completely different from the one that he desired. He will be shocked to see a Burkina Faso whose, can I say, marriage. Thomas Sankara would be shocked to find a Burkina Faso whose romance with the colonizers is strong and top-notch. I believe the people of Burkina Faso have something to do. They have a homework to do. And this not only goes to the people of Burkina Faso, this goes to all African leaders. We have the opportunity to fulfill the desires of Thomas Isidore Noel Sankara. Thomas Sankara desired an Africa which was self-sustained, an Africa which was in charge of its own resources, an Africa that would be in charge of its own governance, an Africa that invested heavily in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. That was the kind of Africa that Thomas Sankara desired. And the people of Burkina Faso, you have a responsibility to fulfill these requests. You have a responsibility to make Burkina Faso functional. This is an open letter to the people and the leaders of Burkina Faso. Please remember what Thomas Sankara desired, and remember the kind of Burkina Faso, if so. If you are to fulfill Thomas Sankara's requests, then Burkina Faso must be self-sustained. Africa must focus on Africa, and Africa must be there for Africa, with careful formation of diplomatic ties with the colonizers. Thank you.